So obviously UFC 300 is getting closer and closer, and speculation and anticipation for the card is getting bigger and bigger. But I feel like there's a fight on this card, and even I guess maybe a fight and a half, because a fight that's not happening anymore, that really could kind of give us an idea that maybe the UFC just doesn't know what the fans want anymore. I know that a lot of people look at this card and say that it's one of the best cards they've ever seen, because it's a fantastic card, don't get me wrong. Do I think that it's still a little bit disappointing from what Dana White promised us in those interviews at the end of the year last year? Yeah, I think they have let us down a little bit. But there's a couple of fights on this card, or a fight that was rumored for this card, that really does make me think, do the UFC really know what the fans want? Because did you guys know that Bilal Muhammad versus Leon Edwards genuinely was planned to be on a massive spot in UFC 300? But after the backlash from the fans, the UFC decided, you know what? We're not going to go through with that plan anymore. The UFC thought Bilal Muhammad versus Leon Edwards would be like a main event, or at least a co-main event for UFC 300. Now, in my opinion, definitely you should put Edwards versus Muhammad as the co-main event of this card and bet the main event whatever the main event is planned. But apparently the plans are now not to have Bilal Muhammad versus Edwards on the card, which I think is a shame. But to build the card around Edwards versus Muhammad at UFC 300, that's crazy to me. But that's not even what this video is about. This video is about that fight. A few months ago, I guess, Dana White originally said that he had a rabbit in the hat, and he had a super fight that just happened to fall into his lap. When you guys think of super fight, what do you think of? When I hear the words super fight, I think of John Jones versus Francis Ngannou. I think of Nate Diaz versus Jorge Masvidal when they did the BMF title. I think of Conor McGregor versus Nate Diaz in a trilogy. I think of Conor McGregor versus Charles Oliveira. Charles Oliveira versus Islam Makhachev in a trilogy. Maybe even like just something crazy like Oliveira versus Edwards or something nuts. But what is a super fight in Dana White's eyes is Holly Holm versus Kayla Harrison. I mean, come on, man. Listen, I will make it clear, I love Kayla Harrison being signed to the UFC. I think she's going to add a lot of excitement to the weight class. I think that she could become the champion at 135 and be a loved and hated champion simultaneously. I think she could really save the weight class, because at the moment, Raquel Pennington is the champion. And if you watched Pennington versus Mayra Bueno Silva, it wasn't very fun. We don't want to see that too much. So hopefully we get to see Harrison versus Pennington soon. But I feel like, honestly, in my opinion, I think a super fight really would have been Harrison versus Nunes if they could have pulled it off. Or even Harrison versus Juliana Pena. That would have been incredible, because obviously Harrison and Nunes, I guess, had that little bit of a beef. They kind of had people talking about who would have beaten the other, and just kind of discussions about that, or even like who's the greatest women's fighter of all time. Is it Nunes? Is it Harrison? I mean, in my eyes, it's Nunes, but you guys kind of understand the talks. Juliana Pena beat Amanda Nunes, so you could have done the woman that beat Amanda Nunes versus Kayla Harrison, the fighter that a lot of people were comparing to Amanda Nunes, and done a super fight like that. It's just a little bit disappointing that it's Holly Holm, because people were joking that Holly Holm was going to be on the card. People were saying, you know, in the UFC, they're going to put Holly Holm on the card. You know why? Because she's headlined so many Apex events. It's a bit silly at this point. She's 42 years old. I understand she beat Ronda Rousey, one of my favorite knockouts of all time. I actually love watching that fight back. Not that I don't like Ronda Rousey, it's just such an incredible performance considering the underdog that Holm was. But she's 42. She's not in her prime anymore. She's not going to fight for a title again. Like, what is she doing on UFC 300? What's she doing headlining these events? It's just like... And this was a super fight to Dana White. Dana White thought when he announced this fight that the fans were going to go crazy. We're going to go nuts for it. We're going to be, oh my god, this fight has like saved UFC 300. Make this the main event. It's Holly Holm. She's 42. Man, like no one cares anymore. Like, what's happening? This isn't a super fight. It's a super fight. Dana White and the matchmakers thought this was a super fight. Like, what are you guys doing? It's just crazy to me, man. It's just crazy to me. Like, I like the fight. I made it very clear in my video that I like the fight, and I like the fact that Kayla Harrison has been signed to the UFC. This isn't a super fight, you know? You could have done something better. Pena versus Harrison would have been incredible. I know the timing wouldn't work, but Pennington versus Harrison would have been cool as well. I guess to add another title fight, it's just like, damn. Like, I look at this card and I think, man, it's good, but like, I'm looking at it and thinking, I really thought 300 was going to be better, though. I'll be honest. I know a lot of people look at this card and think that it's absolutely incredible. I'm actually kind of looking at these prelims right now, and I'm thinking, damn, this isn't what was advertised to us. We were told that the fight card was going to be so good, we'd look at the first prelim of the night and not believe that it was the first prelim of the night. The first prelim of the night is going to be Andrade versus Rodriguez or Nickel versus Brundage. I wouldn't be surprised if they're the first prelim of the night of any pay-per-view, to be honest. Like, I know people love Andrade, and people are going to say, oh, but Andrade has knocked so many people out, she's fun to watch. It's like, yeah, I guess, but like, this isn't what was advertised, you know? There's better fights. There were better fights to be made. I did a card builder. A lot of people did card builders. A lot of people did realistic card builders. Some people did unrealistic card builders. Nonetheless, ideas were given to the UFC. They didn't really jump on them. I don't know, man. I just don't know. I'm still got a negative opinion on this card. There's 11 fights on the card. They can only add like 2 or 3 more. I'm getting nervous. I hope they announce Edwards versus Muhammad as the co-main event. And then as the main event, it's like Adesanya versus Duplessis or something like that. Or maybe a Conor McGregor fight. I just don't know. I feel like... I don't know. Like when they announced the card as well, they announced 3 fights. Keita versus Sterling, Prochazka versus Rekic, and Nickel versus Brundage. And I think they just announced 3 prelims. Like... I said, I know Prochazka's a well-respected fighter. He's a former champion. He's a loved name. I think that's the featured prelim. It's on the main card. On Tapology's belt, or it's the featured fight of the main card. What are we doing? What are we doing? And Harrison versus Holm was your super fight. Holly Holm cannot be in any super fights anymore. Even if they brought back Ronda Rousey to fight Holly Holm, I would probably say, like, why didn't you just, like, give her Pena or something? I don't know. Pena. It should have been Pena versus Harrison. That was the fight to make, man. God, I'm actually... I've lost hope. I regain hope, and then I lose it again. It's rough. It's rough. It's rough, because, like... I follow the sport. For 7 years. Every weekend. Every Sunday. UFC 300, a celebration. And this is it. Anyway, I'll see you guys in the next video.